Get ready to uncover how schools manipulate students' thoughts, stifle their potential, and how politicians steal money in the future of America from kids. Welcome to the JB Show.
Hello everybody, this is the Operation Anti-Indoctrination podcast. I'm your host JB, and we have a fantastic show for you today. Get ready, buckle up. This is going to be an explosive one, but first, I hope you're having a fantastic Monday. You know, some people say Monday is the worst day of the weekend. Well, those people are right, but it doesn't mean it has to be terrible. You know, Mondays can still be alright. I know I'm starting homeschooling tomorrow, so that should be interesting, you know. Never done this before. Little nervous, excited, you know. Apprehensive maybe would be the best word, but we'll see how it goes. Anyway, another crazy couple of days that have gone by ever since the last episode. Another crazy bout of rioting and violence and all that fun stuff, which we just love so much, you know, wanting to destroy America. Look, I don't want to get into the political craziness of this whole what's going on right now. You know, I'm using sort of using euphemisms here, but you know what's going on right now. I don't really want to get into that all that much, but I will say this: I don't want to tear America down. I don't know what that implies, but that's yeah, and unfortunately our school system does want to tear America down, which is why we're doing this podcast, because we want to save America, we want to preserve America, we love America, but unfortunately so many don't. So let's get into some stories here. First, from the Daily Caller, a public school superintendent tells teachers to, quote, examine their whiteness. Now, as to what exactly the term whiteness means, I am not sure. Your guess is probably as good as mine. But apparently the superintendent I'm quoting here, of a Minnesota public school ushered in the new semester by urging staff to examine their whiteness and their role it plays in perpetuating racism, unquote. So we have this superintendent, Rhoda Murray Reed, all right, where she's saying that we have to examine our whiteness. Now, again, I don't really know what that means, but she says that we have to, like, recognize how racism is in every single bit of our society, which seems a little bit lofty to me, but that's supposedly the case that they're making. They are of the opinion, and saying that, you know, we're all privileged for a certain way. You know, if you're male or if you're white, then, you know, supposedly you have this great aura of privilege. You know, you can decide if you buy that or not. But basically, this is a obvious activism by the public school system, where you have just this, you know, this obvious leftism, whether or not you agree with it, leftism, this radicalism, this, you know, wanting to totally replace society with whatever you want, with your ideal image of what a perfect world would look like. And this is not the first sort of thing like this, actually. Back in 2019, Seattle Public Schools started something called Math Ethnic Studies, which is basically where they're saying that math was founded off oppression and that math is subjective and racist. You see, a long time ago, everything was objective. Now it's all subjective. Well, I don't know. Maybe tearing down America's cool. You know, it's fine, right? Anyway, another just gem here. A New York assistant principal, upstate New York, not New York City, not Long Island, not that lovely place, but an upstate New York assistant principal was at a protest saying, I'm not going to use his word, but you know, F the police, right? Saying not so nice things about the police. This guy, Steven Lysenko, who was also a teacher, by the way, a 9th grade teacher, it would appear, was caught saying F the police and saying that they're horrible, insert more curses, I'll just say terrible job they're doing, although he used somewhat more flamboyant language there. and saying that they can get out of America, all that fun stuff with, who knows what he's teaching his students, basically. Is he telling his students, the police are terrible? Is that what he's telling them? Is he saying that the police are somehow inherently evil? If you're a policeman or woman, you're just a terrible, horrible, racist person? Is that their what they're propagating? Is that what they're saying? And what's more concerning is that there's a change.org petition which has garnered many signatures, which is saying that somehow this guy shouldn't be fired. This guy is, I'll quote from the petition here. You just listen to this quote. He is setting a good example to his students at Spencerport, showing us to fight for what we believe in. Swear words are just words and should not be reason to be fired. Unquote. In a coincidence, this guy, Lysenko, was also president of a local chapter of the National Association for Multicultural Education. Now, what is the National Association for Multicultural Education? Well, it's basically a organization which is trying to promote, in their words, equity and social justice. Now, you can take that at face value if you'd like, but it's more likely radicalism, basically. Radicalism in the school system, where we're going to have this crazy radical change in society, getting rid of the police, for instance. And everything is we're going to have this socialist revolution, and we're going to have equity, and everyone's going to be equal, and it's all going to be great because, America sucks right now. It's not like we're the best country in the world, right? It's not like we're the most successful, most financially, we've created the most money for the most people. Our Constitution has served as the basis for much of the rest of the world. I could go on for an hour, but basically, the radicalism is in our school system. And this is the purpose of our school system. The school system, as we will show, was built to radically transform America by by indoctrinating kids in what Orwell called doublethink, in order to have a radical transformation of America. All right. From everyone's favorite news source, CNN, is reporting that President Trump is saying that the Department of Education will investigate usage of 1619 project in schools. So the Trump Department of Education will be investigating the 1619 project when its permeation of the public school system. Now, if you don't know what the 1619 project is, well, have you been living under a rock? Is the first thing I would ask. And second thing, I will tell you what it is. The 1619 project is a brand new project sponsored by the New York Times, of all places, saying that America was not founded in 1776, but instead founded way back in 1619 when the first slaves came here, and that America there's been a great conspiracy in America of systemic racism, and that the revolution was secretly just so we could preserve slavery, and the Civil War was never, it was never about anything to do with ending slavery. No one cared about it. Everything is still horrible. We're no better off today than we were in 1619, right? It's no better off for the blacks. It's just we're just still we're still horrible. We're still evil. We're still an evil country. The critical race theory where everything is systemically racist and blah blah blah. That fun stuff, right? Now, this really. We think that all this is to promote racial equality, but it's really not, It's really just to sow the seeds of division. And look what's happening right now. It's to sow the seeds of division in America so that we're not united. We're not the United States of America. We're just a bunch of races that are competing with each other, right? Because that is what they want. They want America to be destroyed. And they want to do that by instigating a race war, in effect. And the 1619 project is part of that, where you convince someone, you convince everyone, really, that their country is horrible, it's systemically racist. Now you need to be divided, you need to have a group identity, you need to have a racial identity, you need to be an identitarian, you need to be a nationalist for your race. That is what they're saying. They are literally trying to tear America apart at the seams. And the 1619 Project is a part of that, and that's why I have nothing but I detest it. I completely detest the 1619 Project. It is an attempt to divide America. It's an attempt to go back to 1930 or 40. It's an attempt to go back to this racism, to this literal racism. Not what the media says is racism, because most of what they say is garbage, but the actual racism. Maybe it's reverse racism or black on white racism, but then that'll probably foster it the other way around. But it's all an attempt to have racial division. You think, I guess the media would probably call me a racist because I oppose the 1619 Project and critical race theory, but I actually want to be united as a country. I actually want whites and blacks and everyone else to come together as Americans. I don't want people to think of themselves as white first or black first and American second. I'm actually the one that's, I know it's kind of cringe to say I'm actually against racism, but, I want to teach real history. I want people to be proud to be American of all races, to be honest, and I want them to be proud of their accomplishments throughout history. I don't want racism. I don't want identitarianism. So we'll see where this investigation goes, but for the sake of our republic, we can only hope that something happens with this, because it's a real problem. Now, that was all fun, right? Little bit of fun current events there. I don't know. What are we on right now? All right, we're on 12 minutes, so that's fine. Got plenty of time here. Plenty of time to relax and get into some history, which explains everything that's happening today. What you're about to hear will probably be one of the most important bits of history you've ever heard. Probably the most important, because you didn't learn a whole lot of important history in school. It is the most important history. It is the thing that explains exactly why all this violence is happening. Children are so suicidal, so depressed, so unhappy, hate school so much. This is one of the single most important bits of history you will ever hear. Today we are going to be talking about a guy named Ivan Pavlov. Now, he's rather famous among people who have even a moderate understanding of history. He was a Russian psychologist and psychiatrist, and here, let me what's his official job here? He was a physiologist. Okay, so his whole thing, if you may know, was classical conditioning, where you have conditioned reflexes, instinctual, naturally, what you're doing naturally, right? Example this article gives is if you were driving through into a tunnel out of broad daylight, and your eyes will automatically adjust to the light. But a conditioned reflex is when you see a red light and you stop the car. You put your foot on the brake, right? Pavlov wanted to use this in order to basically control what people did, because he was a materialist. He believed in the march of history. He disliked freedom of choice. He disliked religion. He wanted a world governed by his science. So when the Bolsheviks took over Russia with the Russian Revolution, Pavlov, you would think, because he was a member of the bourgeois academic elite, right? He was most certainly an elitist. He would have been executed right then and there by Lenin and his cronies, right? But no, they actually let him continue his work. He was actually quite emboldened by them. He was put in the State Institute of Experimental Psychology and supported by the Soviet government. So, they were allies, right? Because he was basically a communist and they were communists. So let's have a fun bit of work here. So in the 1920s, Pavlov, this guy who's famous for the experiments on his dogs, did a little what you would consider a little bit more nefarious experiments, where he tried to learn through conditioning experiments, how to artificially create human disorganization, to disorganize the mind, to induce a disorganized state where you wouldn't know anything, you wouldn't be able to tell what was going on, you'd just be confused, you'd be dazed and confused. So, this was written about in a book. This was written about in a book called The Nature of Human Conflicts, which was published in 1932 by Dr. Alexander Luria. And he recounted his experiments with Pavlov and talked about that he wanted to create disorganization and drive people insane, and he said exactly how to do it. So in the preface to this book, The Nature of Human Conflicts, Alexander Luria writes, the chief problems of the author were an objective and materialistic description of the mechanisms lying at the basis of disorganization of human behavior and an experimental approach to the laws of its regulation. How about that? So he wanted to create human disorganization artificially. That is what he wanted. Pavlov, doing experiments for the Soviet government, wanted to create artificial disorganization. And here's what he says later on in 1935. Pavlov attained very definite affective breaks in acute disorganization of behavior each time that the conditioned reflexes collided, when the animal was unable to react to two mutually exclusive tendencies or was incapable of adequately responding to any imperative problem, unquote. So if you didn't understand that, let me help you out there. Basically, he's saying that this guy he worked with, Pavlov, realized that the way you create disorganization, if you told the dog, the kid, the adult, the mouse, if you gave them two opposing reflexes, doublethink, if you've read 1984, where you simultaneously believe two different things at once, two different contradictions at the same time, then that will cause the person to become disorganized, and then you can go from there. You can do whatever you want to them. When someone's disorganized, they have lost their principles, they've lost their maturity, they've lost their sense of dignity. You can do whatever you want with them, right? So basically, this was imported by a guy named John Dewey, who was a philosopher and a psychologist, and his colleagues like John B. Watson, B.F. Skinner later on would kind of go off Pavlov and go further from there. The NEA was in this. The NEA had connections to Pavlov because they were big fans of the Soviet Union. They saw their Soviet schools as a great new way for the next step in education, right? In order to get a perfect society. So Pavlov's ideas, whether or not he intended them to be utilized, were imported into America by John Dewey, John B. Watson, some of his other fellow psychologists like Andrew Armstrong, Charles Judd, James McKean Cattell, G. Stanley Hall. These other people, they imported them into America in order to put them into the school system. John Dewey himself said that the Soviet schools, which were using Pavlov's ideas, were a great experiment, and he preferred seeing them tried in the Soviet Union first, only for selfish reasons, but really he could have had it either way, you know. Dewey, and these were the academic elitists of their time. They were the ones that guided education. They were the ones that were giving out the PhDs and the master's degrees and the bachelor's to all the teachers they were teaching at their colleges. They were the ones that were making the education. They were making education. They were the ones that were importing this and making education for the future. For the future where they were going to create behavioral disorganization. Now let's give some examples of this, because you might be saying, all right, so this all happened, right? They wanted the behavioral disorganization, but how, is it actually going on in schools? Is it actually happening? Well, yes, in many ways. The first way is in the way we teach reading, because English is indisputably a phonetic language. We have an alphabet, we have letters, we have those letters with sounds. We are a alphabetic, phonetic language. But in school, we teach a holistic look-say, whole language method of teaching to read, which basically makes one memorize the words as little pictures. Now, what happens when you memorize the words as little pictures? You make mistakes. You're a horrible speller, you're a horrible writer, you're a horrible reader. I have the holistic reflex. Thankfully, I was taught enough basic phonics to the point where I know how to read fine, but it affects me to this day. I read words like acute as accurate. I read sliver as silver. I read I read all sorts of words how they should not be read because I have the holistic reflex that Pavlov was behind. I have that because I was taught to read a phonetic language as though it were Chinese or hieroglyphics, where everything is a picture. That's how I was taught reading. Another way it's used is in the way we teach, because you're being told the whole time you're in class, you're being told to be quiet, right? You're being told to sit in your chair, stay sat, look at the teacher, don't think about anything else, don't do anything else, all that, right? But at the same time, you're sitting next to your best friend to the left of you. You got your friend to the right of you. There's a train hanging from the ceiling above you. There's a bunch of posters on the wall next to you. There's a Hot Wheels on the counter to your side. You know, they're trying to literally to create disorganization. They're telling you to focus while they're showing you that it's great, that you want to be hyperactive right now because you got your friend next to you and you got all this crazy stuff in the classroom around you. That's what they're doing. And when you create disorganization, then is when indoctrination, like the 1619 Project, like getting rid of the police, like this whole critical race theory, like indoctrination on every political issue, on guns, on abortion, on everything else. That is when it's most effective. That is why our youth have been so radicalized, because first, they were made into disorganized students, and then they were indoctrinated, and then they were made to believe all this radicalism, all this insanity. We wonder why they don't question it. We wonder why they think socialism will work. We wonder why they could be so insane on issues like maybe guns or, others. But this is why they are so insane on these issues, because they have been indoctrinated, scientifically indoctrinated, in order to believe them. Scientifically made into disorganized nut jobs, and then indoctrinated and brainwashed scientifically, all because of this guy Pavlov and his experiments almost 100 years ago for the Soviet Union that were imported into the United States by his cronies. All right. That was a fun episode, wasn't it? That was great. Oh man, it's like a half hour later. I'm chilling back, and yeah. Hope your Monday is gonna be good, or is good, because I think I just ruined my Sunday. All right. Well, that was fun. So, if you have any questions, you can email me, jbsoulshow@gmail.com. If you're watching on YouTube, please do like and subscribe. And if you're watching on anything, please do share the show, because we need to get the word out about this. Otherwise, our country is not going to last a whole lot longer, because we have a group of people that are trying to destroy us. So, there we go. So, until next time, I've been your host, JB. Have a fantastic rest of your day, and goodbye.